Hello, hello. Welcome to the Warkat show, a show about artificial intelligence and the human intelligence behind it. With me today, a version of human intelligence, Daniel Warfield, a data scientist and a great educator and writer on AI. Daniel, how are you?
I'm good. Version of intelligence. I appreciate it. I don't know if I'd always say that, but I try my best.
I like to think another version of human intelligence. How intelligent, I don't know. I'm Neil Katz, tech entrepreneur and CEO of iLevel.ai. And today we got a good one. We're going to be talking about a massive AI rollout that maybe didn't go the way that everyone thought it should. Of course, we're talking about Google's rollout of their AI search, and obviously they're in this massive race to chase Microsoft and OpenAI into radically transforming how AI can change what search is and what search does. Clearly, some of this didn't go quite as well as planned. You might have heard of some of these well-publicized major goofs by the AI. In one case, suggesting that if you've got a cheese not sticking to pizza problem, maybe adding a quarter cup of non-toxic glue to the sauce might fix things for you. And of course, because the internet is awesome, then bloggers started writing articles about putting glue in pizza and trying it. I must say, I want to give some credit to Google, by the way, the non-AI Google version of search, which when I searched for this quote and this tweet, brought up the super funny article, which didn't make them look very good, but shows that, the core product, as we've always known it, still functioning and really good. This wasn't the only crazy example. Of course, there was another question about how many rocks should a child eat every day. The answer, of course, is 0, just to be clear, but Google's AI search recommended that one small rock, as long as it's the right size, would be great for your child's health. Obviously not the right answer. But I want to talk about this because everybody's piled on. I mean, this is like a 1,000,000 car pileup. Google's terrible. Google's behind. Google's already lost the AI search war. They're done. Fire the CEO. They're smoked. You and I both have, I think, a little bit heretical opinions on this. They're actually pretty different. I'd love to hear your take, though, because I thought you had a very different take than most people on this issue. And why don't you give me your sense of what's happening here and why does everyone have it wrong?
Yeah. So, first of all, I want to be really clear. What are we talking about here? So, it was released. It's been released for a while, but it's kind of became a little bit more popular after Google I/O. So, the whole idea is when you search in Google, normally you get a list of results. Now there's an AI model that looks at your question and it tries to kind of do the Googling for you, is what they said. So it scours through the internet, it aggregates a bunch of results, and then it gives you a summarization. So you can read what do I do if my cheese is falling off my pizza? And then it helpfully summarizes, you just put Elmer's glue in the sauce, and then that can help you. And so that's one of the examples, but it also provides a lot of tremendously useful examples. And I think we can go back to that slide because this kind of gets to my point. So there's two, there's a lot of Google searches that people are talking about. It's not just the two we mentioned. There's hundreds, maybe even thousands of searches that have kind of gone astray. The AI model gives you a really weird answer that it might be funny or it might even be harmful. And this is obviously a problem, but it's important to keep in mind, Google gets 8.5 billion searches every single day, and 15% of them are completely unique, or maybe not completely, but they're unique. No one has ever asked that series of words before to Google ever. 15% of them. So Google gets a lot of questions, and it's important to keep the scale of this in mind. We're making fun of these two Google searches, and everyone's passing them around and be, oh, Google's finally dead. They're not the top AI dog anymore. I mean, honestly, guys, get real. You know what I mean? These are two tiny edge cases in a massive sea of success. And the flip side of this is Google gets 8.5 billion searches every day. ChatGPT gets 10 million queries every day. So Google gets an order of magnitude. Yeah, Google gets an order of magnitude more hits every day. And also keep in mind, when you talk with ChatGPT, you're talking with it. So you have back and forth. Each one of those like is a number, right? So when I say, how you doing? It says good. Hey, I have a question about this. That's another hit. Hey, what about this? That's another hit. ChatGPT is more conversational, which means naturally those hit like counts, the amount of times you query it is inflated relative to Google. Usually you Google something and you get an answer and then you get off Google. So the fact that Google has an order of magnitude more queries and the nature of talking with Google is like significantly less query intensive.
Yeah.
To me shows that like Google has rolled this AI system out in a massive way. This is maybe one of, if not the largest rollouts of an LLM powered technology that has ever happened in human existence. And the fact that people are kind of ignoring that fact and the success of it relative to the scale and are just kind of making fun of like Elmer's glue and sauce and like eating rocks. Like to me, I don't even understand. It's really wild.
You know what the first thought I had when people said that Google's recommending you put glue in your pizza, the first immediate thought in my head was, I don't know if you remember Donald Trump during the pandemic, and he would get on television every night and give some kind of batshit advice every now and then. And everyone remembers when he was like, hey, you should just inject Clorox into your lungs. Let's try that. Yeah. And I was like, oh, Google, and they're like, he's got the same coach. It's got the same life coach, the same health coach. Which was pretty wacky. But you also mentioned, pointed something out that I had kind of forgotten, which was that, Microsoft had some stuff too. I mean, they rolled out Bing AI search, and, it was also filled with weird stuff. I mean, they weren't pilloried, I think, the way Google has been, maybe because they were first to do it and they told everyone it's experimental and it's going to make mistakes. They kind of prepped everybody. And it was like, hey, here's this new magical feature that may sometimes goof up. Be ready. And the CEO of Microsoft, even said, it's going to make mistakes, but I'm really happy that I was able to make Google dance and give them a little fear in their hearts. And you can see maybe where that fear has led to Google launching this product that, I guess you would say it's a very successful launch, but I think from a PR standpoint, it probably wasn't. And
yeah, and like this is
the oven a little longer.
I mean, look, like we've both rolled out products before. It's not easy. it's never clean in the beginning. It never works like that, right? Like so the quote Neil is sort of showing here, I believe, is Bing, which is owned by Microsoft, rolled out ChatGPT in Bing, and I believe they had to roll it back. It was kind of unsuccessful, but then the CEO said, well, we made Google dance, so I consider it a success.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, it is a success, right? Like Google is the powerhouse of search. So if you can kind of make them, a little uncomfortable, that is a tremendous success. But I think from like an outsider looking in, from the consumer's perspective, the idea that that was a success and Google having a few queries that are a little wonky in an otherwise massive rollout as a failure, I think that's a complete lack of perspective. And honestly, that's it. Like
maybe it's a framing problem. Maybe they just have to frame these launches with more like buyer beware. It's experimental. It's going to. I mean, they say that, but they got taken to task anyway. I mean, everyone who does a Gen AI rollout right now says, hey, like just be aware. Sometimes it may make a mistake, and you have to be conscious of that. But they got like raked over the coals anyway.
I think so. Like, I don't think Google thinks like a person. Everyone's worried about a little bit of flack, right? And even like companies, like big companies, they're worried about flack. Yeah. But like, let's kind of put this in perspective here. Google invented the transformer. The attention is all you need paper was from Google, and they didn't just sit around after that. I think they created
on which OpenAI, expanded on and built their entire company on this original Google research. I think that's why you mentioned that particular paper.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's this public perception that Google's been sitting around in the background,
right? And waiting for Sam Altman to crush their dreams.
Yeah, and then now they're like, oh shoot, we have to do AI now, and now they're like doing this hasty rollout. I think this is like this weird perception that people have. No, Google was the beginning of all of this, and I think what's important to keep in mind is like, this is what Google does. They do research, they create new technology that's never existed before. Then they wait for it to be productionally viable. They wait for it to be a viable product that's worth their time and interest to really hop on. And
Okay.
when they hop on a new product or idea, they usually dominate. Like they don't always, right? They've had weird
Didn't
foray.
win in social networks, though YouTube is a social network of sorts, but not really. It's more of a social publishing platform. But
Yeah.
they often dominate. They've definitely dominated in search, obviously. Email, they've been hugely successful. Maps, hugely successful. Cloud, hugely successful. But
Yeah.
they have had some flubs. They do launch things that they eventually kill. But this ain't one of them. This is more structural. They know they have to add generative AI features to just about everything.
Yeah, they're not playing around. Like I agree. Like they're not always a dinger, right? They have had some pretty catastrophic failures, and I
Yeah.
think it's well known. But you know, this is their bread and butter. They do AI, right? So I
Yeah.
don't think they're worried about the next week. I don't think they're worried about the next month. I think they're worried in preserving their dynasty, which is search. And they're rolling out, they
Yeah.
just rolled out the largest LLM application, I guess you could say, that has ever been rolled out.
Yep.
And the world's still
It
turning.
wasn't perfect. Yeah.
And it wasn't perfect, but I mean, shoot, honestly, I used it while researching for this. I
Right.
used it yesterday for work. I used it the day before when I was writing an article. I use it. I honestly, at this point, I use Gemini, like Google Gemini, more
Yeah.
than ChatGPT because it's integrated into Google. So I can get the results and the completions right there. At this point, I use it more than ChatGPT. So, like, and that's kind of I feel like a silent perspective because it's not very inflammatory,
Yeah.
but that's a big deal.
I do agree with that. I think, when Google had their I/O 2 weeks ago and they were integrating, generative models kind of behind every button and every feature on from email to to maps to everything else they do, to file storage, you got the sense of, oh my God, this is now a foundational technology at a rollout of several billion people, which is just orders of magnitude, as you say, different than what OpenAI does on their website, and maybe even orders of magnitude different than Microsoft has done so far. But I actually have a different perspective on all this. I actually think people have focused on completely the wrong things. You said that too, but I think it from a different way.
Mhm.
They're going to make the search get better. They will continue to have weird things that show up, as it has done in regular Google search since Google search started. I mean, people kind of forget how rocky the road was when Google search originally launched. That was 20 something years ago. I mean, like it got a lot better because they built AI underneath it for 2 decades. But I actually think the bigger deal is not the perfection of this generative AI search product. It's going to happen. They'll be good at it. I think Bing will be good at it too. The bigger issue to me is more structural, about the entire business of search.
Mhm.
AI search right now, at least as it's being productized today, does not link out at the same rate as regular search. And people don't kind of forget that Google literally is the structural fabric of the entire internet. It makes the entire thing work. Everybody starts basically from Google and then jumps from there. It's like a subway station that takes you to the right web page at the right time, no matter what that web page is, whether it's written by a person or a billion-dollar company. And Google is this navigation that lets really the internet function. Publishers rely on it for their traffic. Almost every company relies on it for their front door traffic to their websites, and we rely on it to send us to different websites. If AI search is implemented in a way that really doesn't link you out anymore, if the answer to your question has been sucked in through licensed or unlicensed content, there's a whole argument about that, but if it sucks in content from the web, basically structures an answer for you, and that sits on Google's search page or Bing's search page or Perplexity's search page, and you're like, great, that was the answer. I don't need to click anywhere. That blows up a lot of the structure of the internet, and it blows up a lot of the business structure of the internet. Now I want to take this a step further. The majority of Google's business is advertising. Yes, they do a million other things, but the majority of what they do is digital advertising. If it was just Google alone out there doing AI-generated search, I believe they'd find a way to make the interface so that they're still able to generate a lot of link outs, and a percentage of those link outs they charge for as paid links. That's literally why they're such a massive company. So they have to come up with a version of this that has lots of link outs, and some of them are paid. The problem they have is Bing doesn't have to do that. Microsoft doesn't care if search is a business or not. Microsoft now has the opportunity to have a link-free or advertising-free search that's better than Google's potentially, and more satisfying because you get the answer on the page. And Microsoft literally could burn the entire search business to zero, and they could just declare search isn't a business anymore. We got the greatest search engine, use it without ads, without link outs. Search is now dead as a functioning as an economic business. In the same way that Google basically said Maps isn't a business and email isn't a business. They've said, look, Maps are free now. Now, there's a bunch of map guys around at the time. People forget there are a bunch of great map companies. And they were like, what? Maps are free now? What? There's no ads in Maps? I can't even monetize with that. Boom. Atomic bomb. Done. There were a bunch of email companies out there 15 years ago. It's not a thing anymore. Just Google's like, email's a free service. Sorry. They collect data from those services so they can service their core search business and serve ads across the internet. They basically nuked a couple of great classes of software so that they could make the better core search business for themselves. Bing has Microsoft, I don't know if they'll do it, but Microsoft has the chance now to basically nuke the entire search business and say it's not a business anymore. Now, why would they do that? Well, they could really put the hurt on Google next door, which they compete with directly in a lot of markets. They don't really compete with them directly in search. Bing's a small business for Microsoft, but they compete in cloud, they compete in data, they compete other businesses. So it's not a bad thing for Microsoft to just like nuke search. It's done. Google's revenue, boom, cut down 20, 30, 40, 50, I don't know, percent. That would do massive damage to their opponent. It would be strategically smart on their part, and it would potentially upend the structure of the entire internet. That, I think, is the bigger question as to whether or not you're getting, this shouldn't be Pizzagate or Rockgate. It's bigger than that.
Yeah, that is, I never really thought about it that way. That is a brilliant take. I don't have much to say about that. I think you're right. I mean, it's speculative, and I think you mentioned it, like, is that really something they want to do? Is it worth the effort? Because it's, we like to say just implement it, but there's a reason that Google's kind of ahead, and maybe it's mostly because of habit, maybe. And Bing has gone better. Actually, I started using Edge, believe it or not, for some of my writing, because there's some functionality.
Browser, it's good.
Yeah, it's been kind of a meme for a while to use Edge, but now it's like they've been working hard. Like Microsoft's kind of been reinventing themselves, and they're kind of creeping back up from the shadows in some ways that people thought they were dead. I think you're totally right. I also think so. Kind of to pivot off that, I think it's very related. Like, right now the hot stuff is Google's behind in AI. I don't think they're behind in AI, but search is in trouble. And I think you're right. Search might be affected by, Microsoft, but also, I mean, believe it or not, I'm a Gen Zer, and yeah. Technically, I'm like the last year.
Does that explain the shirt? Because I don't think I got an opportunity to really just tell you what a fantastic shirt that is.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I haven't watched all the movies that told me it's not cool. So now I'm wearing it. But so like there's another angle. Apparently, a lot of my fellow Gen Zers are using TikTok for search. Like, I think the statistics I was reading, there was a search by there was a paper by like Adobe, or like a study. I think they mentioned like 1 in 10 Gen Zers are shifting to social media for search rather than Google.
All right, that scares the crap out of me. I'm going to tell you that honestly.
Yeah,
that doesn't seem like a good idea.
And like, look, you can.
Maybe I'm not a Gen Z, or maybe I'm like Gen old. I don't know. They call me a boomer. I'm not a boomer, but I'm Gen X. But I mean, how accurate we lie? I mean, my God, it's funny. Why aren't we talking about all the ridiculous bloopers that happen inside TikTok search? It's got to be worse than a rock out of a few glue pizzas out of 8 billion searches a day. And you don't know what quite the what the Chinese government, what thumb they might put on the scale of those searches, put some kind of political agenda. To be clear, not proven. No one has evidence that they've done that, but they certainly have the option to do it if they wanted to.
Yeah, it's so there's a lot of angles to the search thing.
Yeah.
And I think really the conclusion is like, so like, and I tried searching things on TikTok. I actually made an account before this because
Did you do pizza for glue? Did you see if you could find it?
I should have actually.
Yeah.
No, I tried to look up things that I like care about, and I thought it was horrible. But it was funny. There were some interesting things that I didn't intend to search for that I found that I thought were really interesting. And I think there's kind of a
Yeah.
background war here, which is, does search matter or does finding matter? Like the whole presupposition
Yeah.
of Google is that you know what you're looking for and then you ask. But that's kind of being challenged by things like TikTok, where you just go like things to do vaguely, whatever. And
Yeah.
I actually personally, I think if Google's fighting anyone, they're not fighting ChatGPT, they're fighting TikTok. Because now you can say, hey, I'm in I'm in Austin right now. I'm in Austin. Are there things that I can do? And now Google can start answering that question. And that's exactly the type of stuff that people ask on TikTok and on Instagram. They look up things to do, social events, vague things that
Right.
are kind of difficult to search on Google.
And they rely on
So
people to provide those answers, and then they trust there's an authenticity because here's the guy who lives in Austin. It's like blogging used to be. Here's like the guy from Austin who's telling you about cool food, and you kind of believe him. Whereas Google search might feel more corporate or more maybe less trustworthy because there isn't like a friendly face behind the answers.
yeah, totally. So exactly. So I think kind of where I'm at right now is Google is not behind an AI. I don't think there's like really look, there's certainly a lot of competition in the space. I think
Mm-hmm.
to say decisively that they're ahead would be a kind of bold claim to make, but I don't think they're woefully behind. I think that's an over exaggeration of a lot of things. But
I agree
I
with that.
think search is in trouble. And I think search is in trouble from a variety of interesting angles that we talked about. And I have no idea how it's going to play out.
I was in Axios, maybe to wrap this up, I was in Axios event last night as part of New York Tech Week. And there were some creators there that are food bloggers. And I spoke with one of them, very smart woman, who'd become a publisher. She was a cook, a home cook, but has really built a publishing empire. Now has cookbooks. And anyway, the point is she's become an internet publishing business based on her personality and her great talent for both coming up with great recipes and explaining to the public. And she was just really terrified of Google just scraping all of her content. And anytime anyone asks a question, just never leaving Google. And a lot of those answers might be based on her original IP, which is kind of a different piece of this puzzle. If Google presents, or it might be Bing presents an answer that has IP wrapped in it. I mean, the bargain that's been made for 25 years around search has been, yes, Google and Bing or others can scrape my website. Yes, they may provide some of that content in the search, typically a few sentences. But in the end of the day, they're going to send me a percentage of the traffic back to me. And that literally builds my entire business. And like the news industry itself, where I spent a lot of my career hugely reliant on this, but also independent publishers like this chef last night, like this woman. And she's just like, wait a second. Google and Bing are stealing my content. It's my IP. Now they're going to tell people how to make guacamole. That's my job. And what she can do about it, I think, is kind of unclear.
And the road forward is unclear. I think we're wrapping up soon, but
Yeah.
there's also cases to be made that when you get the summarization, it might compel you to look more because you might be exposed to new information that you didn't previously think of searching, and that might prompt you to look through information. Do I do that? Absolutely not. I take the result and I copy and paste it because I'm a developer. But the social aspect of this, of like, how does this actually impact daily lives, and how does this impact people's quest for knowledge, and how do they interact with it, I think is complex.
I think to your point, the way search works today is you ask a question, you get an answer, and you get an answer by links today. Maybe you get an answer by 3 paragraphs of text tomorrow. But if that answer didn't just sit there, if the answer was more interactive, if the bot were pushing you to engage in other things in a conversational way, that might be super interesting and maybe a way out of some of this trouble. If the bot answers, well, here's one way to make guacamole by, Chef Laura. But wouldn't you want to see 3 more ways to make guacamole that might be even tastier? Or like, this is how you make guacamole, but why don't you tell me the party you're planning? And let's get some more content for you. Now, that's really interesting. It changes search from like just a thing that sits there to a thing that's like an engagement machine. But if there's no link out as part of that experience, the thing still comes undone. So like Google has like big decisions to make about how tightly they really want to control the traffic that comes through Google. They'll eventually figure out AI search, but how much is allowed to go back out of the house? Literally the entire business depends on it and a lot of the structure of the internet. With that, another great episode of Warkat. Much appreciated, Daniel. Get back to doing some Google searches. Don't try to eat any pizza with glue in it. And I will see you next time. Thanks a lot.